So I'll call the Town of Northwood Planning Board meeting of March 22nd, 2018 to order at 6:40 p.m. Members present: Justin Michaleski, Hal Kreider, Betty Smith, Lee Baldwin, Bob Strobel. Town staff. We have minutes of February 22nd to go over, and I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Ms. B. Smith, second by Mr. Kreider, and just to note, all members present are added to the voting designation. Items on page 1, let's add Mr. Kreider to the voting designation. Oh, he is in there, sorry, I misread it.
Line 39
Go ahead.
stated that it should be they.
Yep. In line 27, I think is at the end should be, it changes to are. Most of the wetlands are to the rear. And I'll bring this up for discussion. Opinions on the use of the term re-subdivide. Is it, because if they're, I'm not questioning why it was used, I'm not disagreeing with the intent, but if we merge it and then subdivide it, they were never really together to begin with. So I suggest striking the re and just calling it a merger, just subdivide it.
Yeah, I think Scott said that.
He might have.
Because I know the,
I'm allowed to say this, he is an engineer.
no, I know the computer didn't like that word.
Yeah.
That's why it's,
Yep. I think I mean,
They were separate.
pardon me?
They were
Yeah.
separate. They're temporarily putting them back together and then splitting them again
Right,
differently.
right.
So that is a re-subdivision.
yeah.
Well, they're merging and then subdividing.
But if you say you're merging it and then subdividing it, they weren't, subdivide to me is to divide two things, not that from one into many. And they were never one to begin with, so we didn't subdivide them to begin with. They were divided, they weren't subdivided. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's why I'd say if they were divided, we're merging them and then subdividing them. But I don't know. That's why I brought it up for discussion. I don't really care. I mean, I'm okay with leaving it in if other people make sense, but again, it's just me. On page 3, line 21, I think it's thought should be lot, and then I'd insert after 100 feet the word wide, because I think that's how we have it in the regulation, that the minimum width of the lot should be 100 foot or 100 feet.
I had one on page 2, line 13.
Yep,
There should be an E there.
done previously. Okay. Anything else? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Okay, so 500. Okay. Do we have information for Something, okay, it hasn't been distributed already.
No,
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to make sure.
one of those packets.
Yep.
I think it's the top one.
Yep.
And then it's double-sided and maps on the back.
Okay. If I don't have to go digging through my backpack, that's lovely. So this is coming around. And I'll,
Is this one thing, or is there different, are there different things all the same? Can I see that orange file for just a second?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, that's.
Burke Road. Oh. I think that is one road I haven't been on yet.
If I could explain this one a little bit. And,
Sure, good.
Well, there was even another picture that was even a bit more dramatic. What this person wants to do is simply build in kind for a tree went through the, basically right down to the middle of the roof line of the camp.
The October storm.
And they are not looking to do anything other than to replace in kind, but because a building permit is required, they still have to go through this process. The board could look at the map and understand the situation at hand, that they need to try to be able to get the building permit to close it up. They've had to file, and complete this and do a few other things, probably a shoreland permit as well. But if you're not familiar with the roads and you don't want to comment tonight and you want to have the opportunity to get down and see those roads, if you're not familiar with them, then I guess we would wait until our work session. But I did tell the applicant that I would show the photos so that people understood what they were up against.
So they're just rebuilding?
They are rebuilding in kind. It's a seasonal camp only, so there would be no issues with concern over winter maintenance.
Are there, I know it's not our purview because it's on the road, but I'm curious, are there any restrictions such as, limited to the same footprint, same
Yes,
general location, same square footage, or?
Exactly. If they change it at all, they would have to come to the zoning board. And
Okay.
so they're keeping on the same, the building permit says rebuild cottage on exact location of current footprint, maintain current setbacks, camp was destroyed due to a large pine falling on the structure. Proposed construction to minor existing. Where's the second page? I guess it didn't get copies. Did you see this? I guess you have that one as well, right? That picture?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
I think these might be just
Okay.
copies of those. Yeah, I think those are just copies.
I don't know, it just doesn't seem that complicated. They're just gonna rebuild the
Yeah.
same thing, and why hold it up?
I'm leaning the same way, but that's exactly why I asked about the building permit restrictions, that if it was a change in use or a change in square footage or something to that effect, which would, because,
He just bought the house in August. This happened in October.
oh, well,
I don't
I'll
think
state,
he's trying to do anything crazy.
I'll state on the record, Northwood is like that. We bought a house in July, and in, I think it was October, the tornado came through.
Right? Right.
Less than a quarter mile from my house.
You could always add comment on your review and comment that your comments would be based on the fact that it's your understanding that this would be a summer residence, not a permanent year-round residence with winter maintenance. So that way, if someone came forward later and wanted to change it, it would be on the record noting that that's how it is today. And that's why you would be
Okay.
making whatever comments you want to make, if that's your choice to do so tonight.
Well, what is the road like? What is like
Down in
road?
there off Gulf Road?
It's
I mean,
Interesting.
Well, you know, I only bring it up because it's like, at least according to map geo, closer to almost 3/4 of a mile in there until you loop your way in,
According
down, and
to-
double back.
According to the map by Granite, or on the back, you know, from,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's at least a half mile, but I think it's actually further than that.
that's section of Gulf Road though, is the or is the class 6 unmaintained or private side, correct? Where does it change over? I thought it
Where
was,
Broad Cove comes in, I think that's,
I think that's still beyond the public section.
Is Gulf Road paved up to that point?
I don't believe so.
I can tell you that there is actually there are more than one year-round homes, at least one on Brown Road.
Yes.
If you recall, we had, I think it came through here, the nightly one.
Yes. Yeah.
I think there's several year-round that are down in there.
But I'm trying to, I believe that the paved section of Gulf Road is off the map to the right, on the back of that.
Well, I know Lynn Grove is still, it's somewhere right in that vicinity of Broad Cove. As you go down Cole Road and go off there, well, I don't know, see how it,
Yeah.
at
That's why
Cole Road it appears, that might be the end of the Class 5 right there. I don't know. But it's
Oh.
It's
I know, we've got it
beyond
backwards.
Lynn Grove. It's
Is it?
still,
Okay.
it is
Okay.
still Class 5. I can look at the map in the
I
other
think,
room
now
if you
that
wanna
I think
know.
you're right. I think Cole Road, where Cole Road comes off is the very end of the paved section. Well, anyway, what purpose was your question now? Or just
Well-
information?
I guess given it's that far in, I'm just wondering what the road is actually like. Is it,
At that point, if Burke Road, you mean?
yeah, well,
Or-
really the whole length there.
I can't tell you. I don't think I've traveled on it in a while.
I mean, I sort of have the same concerns as, you know, whether it's year-round or not. If somebody's got a problem, you know, can you get emergency vehicles in there okay or not? I mean,
Well-
I'm using as an example, the folks on the one that we just had over in Harvey Lakes Estates, you know, they actually went through so that at least even in the summer, you know, they got it, you know, to where you had maybe 20 feet. I mean, they couldn't get it to the 26 that Nick requested. I understand, and that might change the nature of the neighborhood.
Here's another
Try to
one
do
I don't
that.
think you did have.
But I think we need to be careful about what we commit the rescue folks to, even in good weather. I mean, this is a long way in with no means out, other than the way you came in.
Right.
And this, I mean, it's really convoluted.
Yep. Welcome to Northwood,
Yeah.
or Northwood Lake.
Mm.
Well, this is pleasant.
Well, no, it's Lake, not the name Northwood Lake, Northwood Lakes, or lakefront housing.
And it's not,
I would also have a problem, though, of denying this application or recommending against this application when they have they might not have any ability to affect, the maintenance on Broad Cove or cellar or anything else.
I don't know what the answer is.
What I would say we could comment if we so chose would be that depending on, do you have MapGeo up?
No, I actually have, what do I have up? I
Granted?
have MapGeo up.
If there are an appropriate number of residences in that area, that we could comment to recommend that they consider a Broad Cove road maintenance agreement, or establishing a Broad Cove road maintenance agreement.
Yeah, I think we need to start at least asking that we do that. I mean, I think we need to get the word out.
Because it's a single way in, and there are a large number of houses, or of at least roads to
Yeah, I
maintain.
mean, in my mind, if there was ever a serious problem in there, I think it'd be very difficult to do anything.
I would be surprised if Broad Cove was not wide enough to at least pass 2 vehicles,
Yeah, I don't know.
because there are a
because
number
When I
of
look at
houses in
it
there.
on the, and again, this is,
I think the only way you could really do it would be to look at Google or an overhead.
I'm looking at Google right
Okay.
now. I can't see a road.
Okay, probably because of the tree cover.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the tree cover doesn't look much different where the road supposedly is versus where it's not, so.
right.
I
Well,
would say, I think we need to make sure that it's consistent with what's there, not expanded, and not, upgraded to year-round.
That's not our purview.
I understand that.
Yeah,
But
okay.
should that change, then they have to come for
Okay,
a building
yeah.
permit, right?
Correct.
And I think we should make sure the folks that are making the application understand that, so that there's no surprise. I think this is one of those where, when you approve something, then people, I think, somehow automatically assume it goes on to include everything and everything thereafter. And I think we need to make that clear. Because I would be uncomfortable recommending for this if they were thinking about, for example, making it year-round.
If I could just add another comment.
Sure.
I think that the applicant is trying to do everything that needs to be done. However, with that being said, I think it's my understanding by statute, as long as they do not increase or change, modify, by right, they can do this without
Without
this process,
then we shouldn't,
because it was,
yeah.
beyond their means, and they are just
Sure.
building exactly what was there. And the attorney said something to that effect, that
Mm-hmm. So why are they?
by right, but
why are they
I
even
think
here?
they're trying to go through the process
Okay.
of getting the building permit and doing everything that was requested of them. They're having a shoreland permit done, they have, Dave Elaine has been working on, submitting that, and they're going through all the steps that would be required. And they're going above and beyond.
I mean, just as a question, is there a reason why they can't access this lot from Sanborn Road?
Could be just a deeded right away to get to it, more than likely.
Is there a road maintenance agreement for Broad Cove that you're aware
I
of?
think some of the folks on Broad Cove do have, I don't think it's recorded, but I think that they do. I don't know about once you get down in some of these little side roads, because it's mostly all just summer people down there. There are a
Because I think
few year-round.
Dan Tissignant has mentioned Broad Cove
Mm-hmm.
before, so.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Is that where?
Cole Road, Hatfield.
Yeah, that's out further out.
So, what I drafted for comments, and this is a draft, as I said, given the restriction of replacement in kind, the planning board is in favor of this permit. The board recommends that roads accessed from and including Broad Cove Road consider establishing a formal road maintenance agreement.
So moved.
If not in existence. Do we need an actual motion on this?
No, but that would be good. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything.
I thought
So
I'd ask.
moved. Second.
Okay. Discussion? You want me to read it again?
No.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Okay. Do you want my language?
I got given restrictions.
You have it there?
Yeah, I have it right
Yeah,
there.
that would be
I didn't
helpful.
write it
I can get it.
to the point where you can
I just-
read it aside from me, but I think you can figure it out.
Okay.
And I'll be glad to clarify if need
You
be.
need those photos back, though. That was circulating.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oops.
Okay, I have three,
Oh, go ahead.
could you hand me
Yep.
those for just a
Sure.
minute, and then I'll hand them back to you?
That's fine.
I have three voluntary mergers. I'll start with, maybe the one that's a little bit more involved in the rest first. Some of you will remember, there was a subdivision, now I'm at a loss for the name, Yettons?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Up
Diane
107.
Yetton, I think, owned the property, yes. And it was subdivided, most of it was on Catamount. And then there was a 10-acre parcel that came over to Dimes Road that came out to Old Pittsfield Road.
Correct.
And if you remember at the time, there was testimony relative to the fact that Bill Wormel, who did the survey work on that, had gone back and determined that that one section that is called Dimes Road has always been a part of that parent lot of the 10, which is now the 10 acres, the back portion, but was actually part of the original parent lot. At the time, it was discussed that they would possibly go to cartographics or mappers and then assessors and bring all of the information in as far as clarifying that for assessing records. But Bill was very confident in telling the board that that was one legal piece of land. The property has been sold, and the new owner wants to clarify it. He's ready to start building on the property and wants to do that this spring. So what they are doing is they are putting in a notice of voluntary merger as a means to clarify that it's one lot.
Even though it
So
already,
that it will go,
even though it already is one lot?
even though it already is.
Why,
As a means that would just be recorded, so there was no question in the future that it is one lot.
what's causing it to be questioned in the first place?
Well, if you want the history, we'd have to pull out the subdivision map and really go through it. But what happened was that when Dimes built their first manufacturing facility, they were granted a right-of-way across this parcel. It became called Dimes Road for the purpose of 911, so that they could get there. At some point, and because they paved it and the parcel was beside it, it got cut off as a separate, as just a road, when in fact it was not a road, it was this parcel.
What do you mean it got cut off as a road?
It got delineated by the mappers.
They thought it was either a public road or it was not included, it was excluded from the lot.
Yeah, what I'm trying to understand is what record got changed that excluded it?
The assessing records, not property records.
Okay, so,
Okay.
'cause-
No property records at the registry. Bill went back to the deeds. There's no evidence that that was ever conveyed. It is simply a right to cross
right,
over this original parent lot.
okay,
So there's a right-of-way easement that has been improved to the standards of a road.
by the-
That is a de facto road going across one parcel. It's not an actual
It's not accepted as a public road. or
road
private
right-of-way that would actually subdivide those parcels.
But I'm only questioning because if the deed itself is correct, then I guess, why are we making this person go through this as opposed to just correcting our record?
We're not.
They
They're
chose
doing
to,
it.
I think they want
They
insurance.
want to cover themselves.
Yeah.
It's the term voluntary merger. They just want to they want to clear it up. I don't know if it's relative to their own situation, but in order for it,
Okay, well, let me ask the question, then. What will happen as a result of this?
nothing.
It's insurance.
Well, what will happen as a result of this is that the mappers and the assessors will have to correct it based on this voluntary merger. The other option would be, is to come in and get all the deed research and send all that to the mappers and the assessors, which is going to take some time. This will solve it so that they can go ahead and it becomes one lot.
It is one lot.
Well, it is one lot. It verifies that
Obviously one lot.
What are they,
it is one lot.
What I'm
what are
afraid.
they merging in the format though? Are they
Exactly.
merging?
They're only identifying the two tax map lots.
I guess what I'm,
Okay, so the tax map has given them separate lot numbers.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
that makes
So,
sense.
so what was the basis for that? Because, I mean, if we made an error, we should just go back and fix our error, I guess is all I'm saying.
but not all, yes, we can do that. We
Right.
could do that. The issue is that there is history associated with the lot numbers. And if we go back to, say, map lot 213-12, Dimes Road, if somebody pulls that tax record up again, looking through an audit or whatever, and it doesn't exist anymore, that raises another red flag.
Well, what's particularly interesting is that on the assessing program, it doesn't even show up. It's only on the map. If I pull up that map and lot number, it's on our tax map, but it doesn't even show as a separate lot because it isn't. So it's just clarifying that it shows up on the map with a map and lot number that if I go on to the software, it doesn't even exist.
Say this again, the map, lot 213-12. if you type in 21312, it goes over to, it pulls up map 2062-2. No.
It pulls up nothing.
It pulls up,
Nothing.
So what record are we correcting then?
The map, the tax map. When you say we could go back and fix it, there's a process that would have to be filled out, and the burden of proof is on the owner of the property to
So-
correct it.
okay. So just out of curiosity, this is the town form that they used?
Yes.
Okay. And we know that the deed is correct.
We do. You signed the plan.
Yeah, I've signed a lot of plans.
The board approved it, and it was discussed at the time. And the board accepted
Yep,
that with the understanding that that it was going to be addressed.
okay.
But you know how these things go, nobody filed it,
So-
so this is a means to just attempt to correct the issue with the map.
Okay.
So to be shown as the land that it actually is.
So what is
But
our,
that line
So let me just
removed.
double check again. The map does not show anything for lot 213-12.
well,
I don't know
Map-
which is which, but it's,
The map
does.
does, the map does, but the database type
Right,
of map does
exactly.
not
there's
show it as an
nothing in there.
So what
it's an
probably
orphan
happened
record.
was
It's an
somebody
orphan
that
record.
was doing the GIS update on the map
Yep.
saw that there was what looked like a road there.
Yes.
So they drew a road there.
Yeah, that's,
Saw that they had split a parcel and figured these
Oops.
parcels must have been subdivided and they put a road through
yeah,
and made them 2 lots.
okay.
But it sounds like that new parcel that they orphaned was never entered into the assessing database.
Correct.
It was just something somebody drew on the map.
Okay.
so bottom line, what is going to change, what documents will change as a result of us doing this?
Tax map.
The picture itself,
Yes.
the drawing itself?
The,
Yes.
Well, Map
The-
Geo's
the-
offline, but when it was online, it did show it as a separate lot, I understand that
yes,
now.
and that would
That
go
would be
away.
based on your tax map.
Right. So from what I understand of what will change is that the shape on the map that is 2062-2 and 213-12, the line that divides them will disappear.
That's all that's gonna happen.
It will become lot 206-2-2. Because 213-12 doesn't exist anywhere in the records. Does that
Oh.
make sense?
Yeah, I mean, all I'm saying is, I guess if they think that's the most expedient way for them to feel comfortable, it's fine, and don't need to belabor it anymore. But I guess what I'm really saying as part of that is, if we made an error, why are we making these people jump through hoops to do something as opposed to just going back and fixing it?
Because it would be
Because the
more work for
process
them
takes
to.
forever.
It would be more work for them to do it that way.
Because
Is
they have to,
would
even though
have
it's
to
our
haul in.
error, they have to do the work to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
It's bureaucracy.
okay. I guess I understand it now.
As long, I was going through the back of my head of any kind of, my initial thought was this, is that being somewhat of a cynic or skeptic, they wanted to shift the responsibility or the liability for any kind of merger from them from the landowners to the town by saying, yeah, it was this may or may not be our mistake, but somehow it was a mistake. This is our way of fixing it by having the board do it, but I can't see any existing liability for us to do this, or for this not to do this.
I guess the only struggle, and if this is the way they want to do it, that's fine. Do we have a lot of record called 21312?
No,
I-
it exists
that's-
only
I
on,
guess that's-
it exists only on the map.
Yeah, so, okay.
So that's what I wanted to make sure of, because I remember this application and discussing it. But I'll trust town staff that it's
Well, I
right.
think what happened
So-
was, it was at one time shown as a lot.
Right.
But when the subdivision went through, it was taken off of the software, but then it was not taken off of the map
Right, because the map is a separate
process.
updating process.
Right, and they want to go ahead with building a home on the
And
lot.
if the map, the record on the map showing 21312 is abandoned or orphaned, as is the case in the software, they have to be specifically looking for orphaned records to pull it, and then go in to go in and adjust the map. So it's not just a matter of saying, oh yeah, this lot doesn't exist. You have to, it exists on one side of what's called metadata. You have the map record that shows the shape of it, and then you have the tabular record that's associated with it. The tabular record doesn't exist, so you have to go in into the map data and delete that thing, and that's a separate action. Any,
What kind of a motion do we need to fix this?
Chairman
just need to
sign.
sign it.
You will see that I've changed that form, I hope nobody minds, but the registry is now requiring that big blank space at the top, so we've got just the chairman's signature, which will suffice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Certainly.
All right. The next one is, this is the one for the subdivision that we just did down on Main Street, Northwood Narrows.
Yep.
The two lots that were to be merged and then subdivided, not re-subdivided.
I'm not gonna say,
Okay, any comments on this one?
It's one of the conditions of,
220, oh yeah, 227.
yeah, so this is the correct order then. In our minutes, there was something about this step has to come first, then this.
Yep. Okay.
On Main Street, you turn right onto Main Street as you're going down here, and then immediately on the
Yeah.
left.
property owned by John and Evelyn Chamblin. Shane Carter, I think, was the applicant.
Yeah, between the old Tim's Truck Service Center and the house that burned. And the house that burned is is one of the two lots.
Okay, this particular property is one that has been, it's on Shore Drive. It's a number of small lots that have gone to the zoning board. And I'm going to ask you to sign this tonight. It will not be recorded, and I'll say that on the record, until 30 days following the decision of the zoning board. If there's any appeals, it will not be recorded, but that's just coming up this week, so I'm asking that you sign it and I'll hold it.
Okay.
Because a building permit cannot be issued if this was a condition of the zoning board's approval, that his voluntary merger that he offered as part of his application be recorded prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Okay. Interesting way to do it, but I understand why.
Got some real interesting ones tonight here. They're minor, but they're still, I'd like to address them
More
with the
clear on-
board.
That makes sense? Okay. I mean, in general, I think this is just a formality of voluntary mergers or formalities, it's the landowner wants to do it.
Okay, I think I will actually do mention the Fahey one next. William Fahey did a subdivision on, Rochester Road? It's right on the curve.
11 Stratford Road.
11 Stratford Road. It's right on the curve as you go up, if you can either go around toward Rochester or go straight up towards
That was the one where we
Stratford.
wanted to make 3 lots, right?
Correct. There's a Victorian, that actually, he did use the term re-subdivision on that one.
Whatever.
That had been subdivided.
Right, and he
I can
bought
give you
it,
the whole history if you want, but I don't know if you need all that background. But basically what happened was, there was 3 lots and then it was foreclosed on. The person bought it, wanted it as 1 lot, signed a voluntary merger. Mr. Fahey did. It was recorded at the registry, which states right on it that the lots cannot be subdivided unless it comes back to the planning board. He had a buyer to buy it that wanted the lots separated again, so he came back through this past early part of 2017 after 1st April, maybe May or June. You approved a subdivision. That plan has never been recorded. We do not have a Mylar because the conditions of the plan were never met. He had 1 year to have it recorded at the registry, meaning he had to submit the things that were in waiting, or so to speak. He had to make some changes relative, I think it was driveway permit and different things. Susan was pulling the information to provide to the assessor for April 1st. Looked at that particular one and went on the software, and Mr. Fahey has sold the property. The deed is conveyed as 3 lots. I contacted the town's attorney, and basically we will be contacting both him and the current owner, as it is in violation of state law. What she's suggesting is to give him 30 days to finalize the plan and record the Mylar.
Okay.
But I just want to give you a heads up on that. 'Cause
Okay.
it's a little bit tricky
Yeah.
as to how that works. Okay. And the last thing I have is Camp Yavna. Now, apparently there was, I don't know how many of you have been around long enough to remember that the Camp Yavna used to come through about once a year because they were always adding a bunkhouse or doing different things. And going back, I went and looked at the notice of decisions from prior years, and it was back in 2009 was really the last major project that occurred there. They did like a dining hall and
2009.
Conference. There was something that was done.
That late and long ago?
Yes, there was something that was done, and I think about 2015 that came to the planning board. That was they were redoing septics.
Yes.
And they had to make some changes then. They had to go to the zoning board for some special exceptions. And anyway, what happened is that a building permit was issued for an extension or an addition to one of the bunkhouses as of just a couple of weeks ago. Our building inspector had been talking with them and did not understand or give it a lot of thought or whatever. I mean, he was thinking about what he would normally think about in issuing a permit. The permit was issued, and technically it would have required a site plan under our current site plan regulations. I met with Mr. Bassett, who is the facilities manager there and spoke to him. He brought this plan in so you could take a look at it. I told him I would bring this to your attention and see how the board wanted to handle it. It's a very small addition. It's, I think it's like a 16 by 20 on an existing bunkhouse. And what he did explain to me was that they are about at capacity as far as the number of campers they can have, because it's all based on the septic. The building inspector did give me a sheet that has exactly how many campers can be in each cabin and all this type of thing. So they have that all under control in the building department as far as making sure that they don't exceed any of these numbers. And he said basically at this point, they are, not only did they expand this one, but they'll be expanding some of the other bunkhouses for the purpose of creating more room inside of them, not necessarily more campers, but more distance, say, between the bunks and more room for, because they have received feedback from some of the parents of the campers that, you know, some of these are crowded. So it's more not to expand the actual on-site impact of having more campers, more traffic, more whatever that this board would normally be concerned with. It's more an internal thing to make some of these buildings larger. Now, I'll defer to James. I did look up exempt site plans. The board could ask for an after the fact. You could say, well, it's very minor in scope. I guess you could say you would want an as-built. He said he had no problem providing an as-built plan that shows it.
So,
Because they do have an engineer that does all the work on the project.
so they have a building permit to expand one of the bunkhouses, but not all of the bunkhouses that they want to expand?
Correct, just the one right now. But they know that in the future, they'll be wanting to do this on a more regular basis, which,
Do they know what they want it to look like? Would it be possible for them to just come in with
Do a
one
whole
site
plan?
plan for the
That-
past and the future?
I don't know if they're ready for that.
Okay.
I know that they have a new camp director as of about a year ago. I don't know if they're ready for that yet, where they have that type of long-range planning. The one thing I will suggest, because I was thinking about not only this, but other situations, whether it's the Boy Scout camp, or whether it's, let's say, the granite countertop facility, Johnson's, Co-Brown, any place that's a large facility that already has a site plan. If you look at what's exempt, under exempt, it's 100 square feet. So I'll give an example. Let's say Co-Brown wanted to put a storage building for athletic equipment in the field that was a 20 by 20, they would have to come in for a site plan. What I would suggest is that the board, and maybe James would be willing to do a little research on what might be a reasonable approach, but amend the exempt site plan, I'm talking about in the future so we don't keep running into this problem, that if it's a approved site plan and have criteria, there'll be no, such as we do on the minimal impact, there'll be no additional increase in traffic, or in this case, Camp Yavana it's not going to increase the number of campers, it's not going to bring more traffic onto the site, but there should be some type of mechanism where, whether it's a percentage of the existing structures, and I'm just throwing this out for the board to think about. Because we're going to be dealing with it in the future in more than just one location, I'm sure.
The only, I agree with the intent, because a 10 by 10 structure is 100 square feet for something that's, what, Hannaford is 50,000 square feet.
Right, it doesn't. There's no relationship. To have
Yeah.
somebody, spend $5,000 on plans to put in a
Right.
100 square foot building.
The only issue I have in a case like Campiavna, I guess in specific, is that we have no, well, this is just me being a skeptic. I don't have, if they come in with, right now I have to trust them to say, yeah, we're doing this because we want to make it more comfortable, we don't want to increase the number of beds. Well, I have no documentation of the number of beds or number of campers that come in to begin with.
Well, we do have all that.
Okay.
And we actually, that was one of the, you might recall,
'Cause
when we, that was one of the.
I don't need to see it,
Take a
I was
look
just
at it if
curious.
you want. But that was one of the things that was discussed in quite a bit of length when they were expanding the dining hall and all that, because over time, there was an increase in the number of campers. There was also, at one point, we were receiving a lot of complaints about traffic, about people being on the side of the road, and they have addressed a lot of the concerns that were raised, and I
They're
will
still
say.
walking the kids down to Lucas Pond. They still walk the kids down the road to Lucas Pond.
Do they?
Yes, they
Boy
do.
Scouts do it to Northwood Lake also.
Right. But I'm talking about traffic, I'm not talking about foot traffic. I was referring to
Road traffic.
Vehicular
road traffic, not foot traffic.
Okay. Well, anyway,
Well, they're not supposed to use the boat launches. They have their own beach. They're not supposed to be walking over there.
Well, it's a public beach, I don't think we can stop them from using it. But I don't, that's an enforcement thing that could be looked into. If it's problematic, then it needs to be addressed. This is the first I've heard
I don't know
of it.
why they'd want to. I mean, people go 45 on that road. It's not really safe to be walking the kids down it.
Boy Scouts walk on Route 4.
Yeah, exactly, all
Yeah,
the
but Route 4's
time.
got a shoulder.
Yeah.
Route 4 isn't a 20-foot ride.
Still not a summer camp.
Much more
No,
dangerous.
Yeah,
Yeah, Co
not the
Brown
summer
runs
camp vibe that I would want.
Co Brown
Brown
runs their
on it.
kids down the road too,
but
so.
look at the number that stand abreast, it's usually no more than 4,
Yeah.
and they learn quickly. Not to go
Yeah.
on a streamline.
But it's
Anyway,
something that, as far as a long-term thing, it's something the board should probably look into.
I would-
Two questions, how do you want to address this, and
well,
How big is
For-
the addition? How big is the addition?
he took
Linda
that
mentioned
with him, but I think it's 16 feet.
you said 16 by 20, excuse
Yeah, I think it's in that type of range. I think the whole building's gonna be like 16 by 38 or something.
Pretty
So we're
good size
talking
bump.
about 320 square feet more.
And they're moving there's a restroom, I guess, in that cabin, and there or plumbing or something, they're gonna.
Where's the cabin, where's the cabin listing? The numbers?
There.
Joe?
Numbers
What's,
what?
what's the number of campers column? What's a typical number? 31, 21?
Well, this has total number,
Not total number, just
three,
look,
what?
just the number per cabin.
21-ish.
21,
18,
21, 31,
17,
somewhere around
25,
there.
18, 20.
16 to 21.
21's a higher number, but 18, 16,
Okay.
This particular cabin is near the shore, and it's probably one of the, well, not the smallest, but it's fairly small.
Just thinking that's quite a expansion for 16 by 20.
And what's the?
Well, I gotta
what was
have
the
a, if
existing
I have a,
building?
do we have a scale here?
What size is the existing building?
So what was it before
Because it's
and
only
after?
half again the length of that number 31. It's half again the length of that. What's the scale? I don't see a scale. Oh,
This is 20 feet, so that is 20 by 40. Number 31 is approximately 20 feet by 40 feet.
Is the existing size?
And it's-
Yeah, it's existing size of, well, whatever, if you have number, that's 31.
Yeah, I remember him saying 38, so that's
So what's,
pretty close.
how many campers or bunks in number 31?
Well, actually, there is no bunk 31 here.
Or
Bunk-
building number 31?
Okay, well, don't have that either. There's
Oh.
bunk numbers, but this isn't interpreting the way you're expressing it.
Okay.
There's bunk numbers here, campers in each one ranging, but the GK, G7, I don't see, there's no 31 here.
Okay.
Could it be another combination? B something?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, it doesn't matter,
That's his
just-
list, that's the building inspector.
Total capacities are going 21 through 24 max here on this, most of them around the middle of that, 20. But you got 400, you just said 800 square feet on the existing size, and it wants to increase, because I might get up to speed on this, obviously I just came in late, but going from 800 square feet existing to the addition being what?
A building permit was issued for an addition of roughly 16 by 20.
16 by 20.
So
that's
about 320
15 by 20,
square
I heard
feet.
300 over 800, yeah.
Uh,
300 additional over the
I
800
can go get the
existing.
permit
Correct.
if you'd like, I mean, it'd just take me a minute. You want more information?
So what's at issue though, that they have a site plan and they didn't amend it?
Correct.
So it's about
Is
40 square feet per
the
person.
addition enough to trigger anything else on their site plan, whether it's parking, lot coverage, any of that?
Does it affect any of the parameters that we discuss or review?
So the only
Provided they
thing-
don't change the number of overall campers.
Our parking would be based on the number of campers, not square footage
Well,
of
it's based on.
the buildings.
Well, just,
How many beds they have for 'em, I guess.
yeah, how many beds? No, well, aside from that.
We're basing parking on
Well,
campus?
you're not as long as the number of people stay the same, the use of the septic, the use of the well won't change. Then theoretically, the number of cars won't change,
So
but we
the-
base it on, exactly as you pointed out, is square feet of any use. And they're changing the square feet.
Relative to what? Are you saying, the parking isn't going to change on any of those?
But we base our regulations, the number of parking spaces.
If the regulation is one parking space for every 300 square feet of bunk space, that could bump them up to technically having to have an extra parking space. I'm just trying to
These
figure out
kids are
what the
getting-
magnitude of,
Do
But they're
we actually
getting
have
dropped
that?
off, and then the cars go away.
Yeah, there is no parking per camper. The campers are dropped off and they don't drive around
They
when
come
they're
in.
there.
Barely.
right, so,
I'm just
so how
wondering
was it, how was that parking requirement structured? Was it, they just need to have a certain amount of stacking space for drop off and pickup?
But they're not.
That was before my time.
Or is there a standard that was applied of a certain number of on-site spaces per whatever?
How do we
can't tell
arrive
you.
at that?
Well, let me ask the question a different way, or maybe similar to what Linda just said. Let's say Johnson's, which is now under construction, realizes that, oh, this one tank that we thought we'd have setting outside on the patio now needs to be enclosed in a 20 by 20 enclosure. What would be their requirements in terms of
Under the current site plan regulations, it's an expansion.
Yeah. And that's why I'm thinking.
What would,
Excuse me, so it's an expansion? Even,
Anytime you modify a site plan, you have to have it amended
what
under your
would,
current regs.
if
Okay.
Dale issued a building permit and the as-built of the structure was different from what he issued the permit for, how big a difference would he typically be able to handle without it being a problem?
That's true. That's another side of it. But
Because I think, and we do it less in New Hampshire, but in Ohio, when we had these sorts of things, there was always a note in the approval that subject to minor differences as a result of engineering or what have you, that your as-built
Construction
might
or-
vary from the site plan. It's just a matter of how big a difference, what is a minor difference due to engineering as opposed to a violation of the site plan.
so are we looking for a way to resolve a discrepancy here, or is this just, hey, we issued a permit, please think about this, maybe we need to change the way we do our future approvals? I'm trying to understand, do we need to take action?
I think it's both. I think you need to think of how you're gonna handle this, and then how you handle it in the future is separate. I mean, your site plan regulations are your own, you vote those in, so you could very quickly make an adjustment there. Within a couple of months, you could have wording, have a public hearing, and address it.
So I think this board doesn't handle enforcement. So technically, unless they came with an application, unless we're considering what we're doing right now to be an informal information gathering application, unless there's an application, there isn't really an issue for this board to decide.
Well, that's
There's an enforcement issue that's possibly a violation of their site plan.
right,
But
but it,
given that, then why don't we just say what we think would be the next step, which would be a catch-up?
I would
Site
think
plan review?
if they want to be compliant with their site plan, I would think they would need to come in for
An amended,
an amended site plan approval. If it's 320 square feet, that's higher than the current requirements for an exemption.
what's
And
the
it's
exemption?
100.
100 square feet or less.
Okay,
And it's changes to the exterior of the site, so that would keep it out of minimal impact. So I would think they would need a minor.
okay, well, I think, to be fair to everybody else that applies, we should ask them to amend it. I mean, and let's just make it as easy as it's possible.
Especially if
I
they're
think
probably
what would
going to
be
be doing the other
easiest
cabins too.
For them is since this is an enforcement issue, if it just happened to not be enforced until they were about ready to amend their site plan for the future ones anyway, that should clean all this up, as long as it's clear to them.
Well, that's what I'm saying, just
You
come
need to
back.
clean this up.
Yeah,
I was thinking along the lines of like a master plan kind of thing, or a multi-phased site plan where they can say, phase one, we're going to cover these, as examples, these 3 bunkhouses would be 16 by 20 or some of that effect, and done
So
before.
I think the
But Bob-
simplest version is for them to come with a site plan that shows what they would like to be able to expand to at a point in the future. And I think if I were recommending a way for them to address this with the least number of separate applications possible, it would be figure out what you want to do long-term and ask for all of it at once.
yeah, I understand that, but I think Linda was saying their director is relatively new and they may not be ready to do that.
Which,
Well,
you know, the other thought would be to suggest to the building inspector that they submit an as-built, at least that would be in the file, following the construction.
I mean, I certainly think
I mean, he said they were more than agreeable
There-
to do it,
since-
so I don't,
because of the number of things that get kicked up to a minor because they're changing one thing to the outside of a site, I would think that even if they had to submit this as a minor, I would fully expect that this would be the sort of thing that would come in with a laundry list of waivers, essentially going back down to the minimal impact standards. I think technically the only way to get it compliant as a site plan is to have a site plan, not just the as-built. Unless it's, in Dale's opinion, small enough that he would normally accept it as an as-built.
Well, I think we need, I personally would like to see us be fair and consistent with everybody. And if the approach would be that at this point in time, the site plan would be required, then I think I would ask that you and Linda figure out a way to make it as simple as possible to get this one aspect of it in and done. You know, maybe one meeting with these folks and one appearance here, and we move on. But
well, I think what I tend to agree with James. I'd rather see the bigger picture. The issue is that it's the current permit is out of our hands, but I think as well the building inspector could look to this board, or is looking to this board, for guidance. And if we are amenable to saying we're looking at changing our regulations to say, you know, in the future or within the next 6 months, a year, whatever time frame, we end up that, well, applications or existing structures over X number of square feet. If you want, you have up to a certain percentage of your square feet provided with these contingencies or these criteria, you know, no changes to septic, no changes to parking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You do not need to refile do not need to come in for site plan. You can file an as-built afterward or something like that.
We don't have a description of as-built though in our.
I
Sure we
think
do.
my
Yeah, we do.
recommendation would be to consider what counts as a minimal impact,
Right.
as opposed to necessarily accepting an as-built administratively as an update to a site plan. Because essentially that's what you're doing, is changing those minor changes from a function of the board. I mean, if you're fine with that being that you're essentially making it a staff function to approve minimal changes to a site plan administratively.
well, I think if
Would be
you
what
make
you would be
it
doing.
exempt under certain conditions, then the staff doesn't have to. If they meet that, then
Yeah.
the building inspector can look at it and be the one to decide that they're
Mm-hmm.
exempt.
But wouldn't that would come a little later. I mean, Hal's suggestion is that right now we have a current situation for these folks to go forward. Essentially, they're in the middle of doing something, and they got an approval from the.
I mean, they came in good faith. It was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
an honest error. I mean, nobody's trying to,
No, but I mean,
you know, and they've been,
we can kind of clear this up as Bob is suggesting a little later. But in the
Right.
meantime, we need to facilitate the process and not letting somebody slip by or something. We're recognizing what's happened, but we haven't quite didn't have all our ducks in a row here to deal with it. But these folks, in good faith, we're going forward, and we need to. And it's not anything drastic anyway. It's kind of
Well, I
minor
think
project.
what James was saying, and I think that makes a lot of sense, is you really can't,
Would,
you can't make a decision on this one. It's more for information purposes, and it's really in the hands of the building inspector, but I know he would be looking for some guidance from the board as to whether you feel strongly that he needs to act on it immediately, or if it's something he can tell them that they need to address it.
to circle back around a little bit, you mentioned the idea this would be a minor with a laundry list of waivers. Could we have in the past accepted hand-drawn maps or site plans or some applications?
I didn't say minor, I said exempt.
No, I said said
Oh.
exempt. I think James said.
I think as this one is too big to be an exempt.
It is, yes, but I was saying for the future, they may want to look at if there's no changes to parking or septic or whatever, that if you have over, say, 20,000 square feet of structure
Percentage.
space, that maybe you could have
Do we know how
400
much
square
total
feet
square
or
footage
whatever.
of structure
It's just,
space
that's
they
a
have?
future thing, but
That is future.
'Cause I think where I would come down on just the issue of resolving this, if 320 square feet is little enough that if New Hannaford was going in and it was 320 square feet off, if Dale would just sort of shrug his shoulders and go, that's just the way it came out in the engineering, and I've got your as-built now and everything's fine. If he would consider it to be that minimal, I would say that could just be differences in terms of what was installed.
construction.
Right. If it's enough that he would consider it to be a meaningful
Does anybody want to
difference,
look at this?
I would suggest
Well,
that this,
probably we don't need.
the way
Sorry.
to fix it, to fix this case would be a minor site plan. I don't think it would make sense to discuss what waivers they would ask for here, because I don't want to come anywhere close to prejudging an application. I think we would just point them to similar cases that were minor site plan applications that just missed being a minimal impact.
Well, James, if I'm getting what you're suggesting, if these folks were to come in with a minor site plan with some waivers in it, because we've kind of recognized there's a whole bunch of stuff that is not affected, parking or whatever, septic. And, but in the meantime, can they move ahead with what they're doing?
In the meantime, anything, they got the building permit.
Yeah,
So anything that they do is essentially at risk of enforcement action for violating their site plan.
Right, so
So if it was not enforced, they don't have anything to worry about, as long as they didn't get something from Dale saying you have a cease and desist because you're violating your site
Dale
plan.
seems to be good with this at the moment. I mean, he issued a building permit for one thing. And so, I'm just saying, from the standpoint of somebody in the middle of a project, for them to get hung up as, and this is not, no matter what size, but this is not a big project, but nevertheless, it's big for them, and they have a deadline, as I understand. I mean, because they're looking at summer camp. The purpose of getting this done is June, kids start showing up, whatever it is, and so. And they're fighting weather a little bit right now, but obviously anybody would, but, so. The only bugaboo here would, from what I hear you saying, is that if Dale has some issue with this himself, and he's already issued the permit, so I'm assuming that maybe there isn't any there. In the
rather than-
meantime, can we get it, they can come in and, in process in the next month or so, get
let's just
Rather
have it
than
done.
belabor the point, I think James and I can send your comments back to Dale, and he can handle it from this point. It's really his thing. I just wanted the board to be aware of it. And,
Well, let's-
and more, my concern is to look to the future. Dale's gonna have to deal with this one, but, and how it plays out, but, it's something that certainly should be on that list of items to
To address.
look at and address before we get more of the same.
And I think from the board's perspective, speaking for myself, I would think we should have like a trigger point. How big do we, you know, where do we want to where do we want the exemption to start, or make it start, or do we want to, are we talking Hannaford side, are we talking Johnson size, are we talking smaller than that? What are the impacts? If we look at our 13 points for a minimal impact, or the whatever we called it now, obviously you're going to have a change in square footage, you're going to have a change in exterior. But of those 13, which ones do we want to say, yeah, you hit this and then, or you change this and you get triggered in the site plan? And then how big of a change do we want to allow? And I would think, if you phrase it as a percentage, once you get to, if you're at 20,000 square feet and you want to add, if 100 square feet is our exempt, where do we want to extend that exempt to? Are we talking 3%? Are we talking 10%? Are we talking 20%?
Is this all in the same ballpark as what Linda?
This is the future thing to prevent.
No, referring to, what did you use the term before?
The exempt?
Yeah, exempt, you said something else. Where we have a little fudge factor area.
Yeah.
Oh,
Engineering.
no, we're not talking that, we're
No,
talking
you weren't
strictly
talking
exempt.
engineering, James was, but.
Right.
But what we were,
Well, a building inspector always has a certain amount of leeway that they can,
no, it was in regard to, you said that there could be certain things that we had.
such as it doesn't increase the traffic volume
Yeah,
to the
but
site.
just
and those-
recognizing those as areas where we had a leeway or an exemption, or call it what you would, but,
We'll bring it up on another meeting.
Yeah, but I would just, I'd just like to say, my personal opinion is, we need to treat everybody equally. And if that means that they are in violation, again, my personal opinion, we should ask them and help them get back into compliance as quickly and easily as we can. And if that means, for example, a gentleman's agreement not to enforce until they come in and see us with their minimum impact or whatever it is, that's fine. But I think these are the kinds of things where then people get wind of them, or they talk about them, and it creates resentment, or other people pushing other limits and stuff. And I just don't think that's a path we should be going down. Or
well, we recognize that, I think. I mean, that's what I've heard.
I think that's the reason that it was brought up tonight.
They come back with a minimal or whatever they choose.
that wasn't what I heard.
What, here?
Yeah, I just heard Dale was going to do something, but I didn't
Well,
know.
no, it's,
So okay, so what's the agreement? What's going to happen?
I think in order to fix the issue, they need a minor site plan. It's not up to this board to make them come in. It becomes our business when they file the application.
Right.
but that understanding's going through Dale now, as I understand, and so we're advising consent at this point, or advise only, consent later, and,
Okay, got it.
yeah.
Right, I'm all set, and James, it's all yours.
So I came with a marked up 45-page draft of the master plan. Bob and Hal, I think I emailed it to you about 5 minutes before I ran out the door to come here tonight.
Oh, I didn't see that.
So we can close this meeting and transition to a master plan subcommittee meeting or something, however you would want to handle it. I think in general, I think there are some organizational tweaks that we should probably make to make the layout flow a little bit better and make it easier to find exactly what, if somebody was looking for something in particular, to figure out exactly where that is.
Well, do we need to adjourn and?
Yeah.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I don't think there's anything else on the agenda.
yeah. Okay, well, let's do that then.
Okay. Discussion on adjournment. And just for the record, before we adjourn, Joe McCaffrey joined us at,
7:28.
okay, thank you, and was added to the voting
May I
destination.
officially congratulate the newly elected former planning board members back to the board?
Welcome to the new
Oh.
board, the same as the old board?
Do we need an organizational meeting to revote you and Lee?
No,
think
because I haven't sworn the
tell me,
oath,
does it
and
look like that?
I think we're still in the 10-day challenge, or the recount
Well,
challenge.
I think
No,
today's
we're
the
not.
No, we're not?
Today's-
Okay.
No.
Well, I still haven't been sworn
No, there
in.
were none that were close enough to fall into that, and as of Friday, people were sworn in, so.
I
Wasn't.
was.
I was not. Okay.
Ooh,
Do we still need to be?
That's okay. Well,
Well,
we're
you're still
it's still,
held over, we're
Yeah,
good,
held over.
we'll catch you this,
I'll get there next week, so.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do officers and stuff like that. We'll do that next time. So, but yes, thank you.
You need to vote on adjourning.
Yeah, well, you're given a certain amount of time to
I was
get,
gonna say, usually it's like,
Couple
at
weeks.
least a couple weeks after the election. Usually it's enough to get next week if it would have been tough. Okay. Further discussion on adjournment? We're adjourned at 8 o'clock.